Hey guys, TJ here with ISM. Super excited to be able to bring you another music production tips and tricks tutorial. Super excited to finally be doing this tutorial. I am going to be focusing today on programming real drums for particularly metal and rock. Now, I am super excited to be able to do this because, like I said in my last programming video, I've been a drummer for about 15 years, specifically focusing on metal and rock, so it is my main squeeze instrument, as I like to say. Please keep in mind though, before you get too invested into this, that you will need drum programming software, specifically some kind of software that focuses on real drums. Now, I use Native Instruments Studio Drummer. There's a whole lot of phenomenal ones out there, including like Get Good Drums and Superior Drummers, so go check those out. Now hold up, before you go anywhere. If you are not interested in programming metal or rock drums and you are more of a hip hop, pop, or EDM kind of dude or gal, whatever, go check out my other video on programming some hip hop drums. It should be able to help you out. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alrighty, now that we're loaded up into Ableton Live, we can get started. If you're using a different DAW, don't worry. They all function generally the same, so it should have typically the same features. On this MIDI track, I have loaded up Kontakt. Kontakt is the software that runs Studio Drummer by Native Instruments. It also runs quite a few of drum programming softwares. Right here I have the Studio Drummer, and I loaded up the Stadium full kit. Now please keep in mind, if you are using Studio Drummer, give it a little bit to load. It'll show you right up here. There's that white light right there. While it is still loading, it will be yellow and in the center, and if you try to hit any of the keys or hear any of the sounds while it is loaded, that little red light will flash and you will not get audio. So if you're having any issues, just give it a sec to load up. So as you can see, we have generally a full drum kit here. We have a kick, a snare, 4 toms, a whole bunch of cymbals to choose from, everything you could really need. Now, one of the reasons that I prefer Native Instruments Studio Drummer is because they put a lot of thought into this plugin, particularly making sure that the drums sound real. Now, when you're dealing with a drummer, a human drummer, they're inconsistent with each limb. For example, if you hit with your right hand, even if you hit it exactly the same spot with the same velocity with your left hand, it will sound different. Now, you can hear that demonstrated in their software. For example, if I hit this snare drum, you can hear the difference between the right and the left hand. You can also hear all the undertones, overtones, everything happening that happens in a real drum. You can also hear that when I use different velocities, it actually triggers different samples. This is exactly how a real drum sounds. Now, this is different from other programming softwares like just using a drum rack, because typically velocity only has to do with the sample volume. It does not have to do with the actual sample itself. This is the main reason that I bring up the whole thing of needing to own some of this software, because it's very difficult to program on your own and would take a lot of time. Alrighty, now if you are using the same software, as you can see in this one, we have a couple different drums to choose from depending on what we are selected on. We can also adjust the overhead mix, the room mix, tune the drum up or down, adjust the attack, hold, and decay. Most good programming softwares should have this sort of a feature where you can choose between different drums and affect how the drum sounds. But alrighty, enough talk about this. Let's get into actually programming. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and make a MIDI clip. Now that we have a nice little 4-bar MIDI clip loaded up, we can see that right here we have counts 1, 2, 3, and 4, and bars 1, 2, 3, and 4. We can also see our piano roll right over here, which are all of our notes, so that we can program the drums in. So what we'll do is we'll start with just some rock drums. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here to where our kick should be at, and our snare. Wonderful. Now, a basic rock beat is just a kick on 1 and 3, and snare on 2 and 4. If I right click on the grid, it'll bring me up a bunch of these options where I can choose quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. Now I'm going to do this to make my life a little bit easier when it comes to programming these, since we're going to be dealing mainly with just quarter notes. I'm going to select quarter notes. As I was saying, kick on 1 and 3, snare on 2 and 4. Let's go ahead and highlight this and duplicate it. Okay, and then we just have a basic rock beat programmed. Obviously, it's just kick and snare, but let's give it a listen. So that snare is sounding a little bit weak to me. I'm going to go ahead and turn that velocity up. Now it's just really cracking. Let's bring it a little bit down. Much better. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and put a crash cymbal right on the 1. I'm also going to go ahead and program a crash cymbal on 3. It's also very common for drummers to really drive that downbeat home to hit actually 2 crash cymbals at the same time. Alrighty, and we have a little bit of something going. I'm also going to add a little bit of a backbeat with the hi-hat just to keep some 8th note time. So I'm going to go ahead and right click again, open up that 8th note grid, find the hi-hat sample I want. So as you can hear, we have 3 different hi-hat sounds. We have one where it's hitting with a stick and the hi-hat is closed. We also have a foot hi-hat, so just a gentleman pushing down on the hi-hat with his foot. And then a fully open hi-hat. So since we're doing 8th notes, I'm going to focus on just the closed hi-hat. Alrighty, let's hear how that sounds. Okay, already sounding pretty good. I can hear a little bit of a real player behind that kit with those hi-hat cymbals. As you can hear, each one of them is not 100% consistent. So you can kind of hear the inconsistency of a human player playing. It's pretty neat. I'm going to add an extra little hi-hat in there just because it was bugging me. And then let's go ahead and really drive this home. I'm going to select all of these. Turn their velocity up a little bit. And then we're going to go and program in the softer velocities on the offbeat hi-hats. It looks like I actually accidentally grabbed the wrong ones for the velocity change over here, but it sounds pretty cool actually. It sounds like he's going from keeping time on the downbeat and then keeping time on the offbeat. So we'll just go ahead and keep it. It's a nice little mistake. Okay, now let's just go ahead and throw in a little drum fill over here. So I'm going to find the toms in here. Sound big. Okay, let's just go ahead and turn this to a 16th note grid. We're going to zoom in on this little bar over here so we can get this drum fill in here. And let's just do a basic 16th note drum fill. So it's just going to sound something like this. Pretty standard drum fill. Now again, to just make it sound like there's a little bit more of a real player behind the drum kit, I'm going to select these first notes and I'm going to accent them a little bit. We can even go a step further and make it sound like he's keeping time on the hi-hat with his foot. Alrighty, let's go ahead and check out the whole thing. And then from here, you can add really any embellishments that you want. We could bring this kick downbeat up a little bit, maybe this one a little bit, all on the one, just so it sounds like we have maybe an eager drummer that's hitting that kick drum a little hard on that downbeat. We could even go ahead and put maybe a crash cymbal on this too to match up with that snare hit. And then we have something like this. Those foot hi-hats are sounding cool, but let's bring the velocity down even a little more. And there you have it, programming some simple rock drums. Now again, like I was saying previously, you can add any sort of changes you want to match with the song. You could do a basic rock beat, or you could do something like a kick, double kick hit. So it'd be a little more like this. And then lastly, we could even go a step further and go in and actually change the sound of our drums. So I could change the snare sound if I wanted. That one's even sounding a little bit more rock and roll to me. I also think that maybe these toms are a little bit too low on the low end for some rock, so we could tune them up if we wanted. Let's hear that drum fill. Anyway, as you can tell, you have almost unlimited options as far as getting the drum timbres and tones to sound, programming the actual rock drums, anything like that. You should be set and good to go with some software like Studio Drummer. But hold up, we're not done yet. Let's get into programming some metal drums, because metal drums are a beast all of in their own. Alrighty, now with these metal drums, I'm mainly just going to be focusing on how I program the actual types of drums that I do. A lot of double kick, a lot of blast beats, and how I kind of set those velocities, dynamics, and drum tunings to get the sounds that I get. So why don't we go ahead and just start out with a nice double bass pattern. I'm going to right click, make these 16th notes, select the kick drum, and we're going to throw in these double kicks. We'll leave that last bar open for a nice little fill. Since metal is always intense, I'm going to take these kick samples and turn their velocities all the way up. Then we'll go in and just throw some snare drums on count 3. We're going to turn those velocities up also. Now I'm hearing that bigger, lower snare drum. Fantastic for a big rock snare. Not great for a really fast metal snare. So we're going to turn it back to the smaller guy. And we'll mess with any tunings or settings as we go. Alrighty, let's go ahead and listen to how this sounds. Immediately, that kick drum is just too beefy. It is sounding a little bit fake. So let's go in, select this kick drum, and we're actually going to tune it up to give it a little bit more of that metal sound. We're also going to get rid of some of that decay and just make sure that it's a nice snappy sound. It's typically what you're looking for in a metal kick drum. Then let's go on in and get some crash cymbals in there, because as everybody knows, metal is intense, so we gotta crash everything. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull up some eighth notes. Actually, let's make it some quarters. Let's make this some slow, trudgy metal. Now, just like the rock, they both will start on the downbeat. So I'll go ahead and put an 18-inch crash and a 16-inch crash. Then we'll just keep that 18-inch crash going. We'll go ahead and add the 16-inch crash also on the downbeat halfway through the bar. Because I absolutely love China cymbals, let's put this snare hit with a China. Let's go ahead and give that a listen. Not too bad, it's a decent start. I think that the cymbals could be a little bit more intense, at least the 18-inch crash. We're just going to go ahead on over to our toms. Now, typically drum fills in metal are pretty quick, so we're going to program a pretty quick drum fill. I'm going to go ahead and choose 16th note triplets just to really drive it home. To add some added intensity, why don't we start it out on the snare drum, then we'll move in between that and some toms. Now this is going to sound pretty quick. Now just to really make this sound like an intense drum fill, what we'll do is we'll do something kind of similar to what we did with the rock. We'll take that first beat, we'll turn it up. But then just since it's so fast, I'm also going to take the other, what would be a right hand hit, and turn those up just a little bit as well. Let's check it out. Starting to sound like a real drummer. I'm going to go ahead and select all of them, and we'll just turn the intensity up a little bit, just so we're really driving that fill home. All right, let's check it out. Maybe not the best drum fill since we are going from 16th to 16th note triplets, but you get the general idea. I use this technique all the time of programming that first hit a little bit louder, the other right hand a little bit louder, and the left hand a little bit softer. Now, even though the software is already kind of doing this for me, I find that doing it on my own just really drives the effect home. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select all of these, and we're going to delete it. One thing metal drummers do all the time is a little thing known as blast beats. There are several different kinds, several different ways to do this, but let's just do a quick little common one. Goes a little something like this. Should be sounding pretty familiar already for all you metalheads. Now, what's common is that they match up the kick with an open hi-hat. So it sounds like this. And then what they'll also do is they'll also accent on crash cymbals with guitars or vocals or other kind of cues. And this sounds something like that. Just like that, you can have a nice, quick, fast-paced drum beat that is pretty common in metal. Another thing drummers will do is they'll actually add little gallops and hops onto these kick drums. Easy ways to do that is just to go in, select a 32nd note grid, and we'll just add some little gallops here and there. And now we have... There's also the reverse of this pattern. Now what I can do is I can just go ahead and take all of these, delete them, go back 16th notes, and we'll start with the snare instead of the kick. Sounds like this. And then we can add all the same dressing if you'd like. And that'd be something like this. Now moving on to one of my favorite blast beats. That one goes a little something like this. So all we did was we just selected a 16th note grid and put in a 16th note kick pattern with a 16th note snare pattern accompanying on top. A nice little trick to get this to sound a little bit more realistic is to just turn that kick drum velocity up a little bit more than the snare drum, because as a drummer is typically playing the snare drum with one hand, they won't be able to play it at 100% volume like they normally would. So we have something that sounds like this. Oh yeah. Now, there's a couple different ways we can do this. We could have a ride cymbal match 16th notes with this. That's a common pattern, but one of my favorites is to have the hi-hat actually accompanying 8th notes along with this. I find it helps keep everybody kind of on the same page. So let's go ahead and throw that in. So now we have... Go ahead and turn that hi-hat velocity up. And of course we can add in crash cymbals and all that good stuff to just really jazz it up. Alrighty, and then another little variation of a pattern like this is I'll go ahead and select everything. We'll get rid of it. Go ahead onto an 8th note triplet grid. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put in triplets for the kick and snare. I'm going to do the same trick as before. Just turn that kick drum velocity up higher than that snare drum velocity. And then since triplets normally don't get along all that great with 8th notes, they can work together, but in this instance, I don't find they do. I'm just going to put that hi-hat actually as quarter notes only instead of 8th notes. And we have something like this. Also a very common drum beat. Now, if you want to go totally crazy, make your drummer hate you, we can go ahead and make these actually bomb blast beats by doubling the kick drum into 16th note triplets. That sounds a little bit craziness like this. Also a common pattern used. Alrighty, now that we've covered some basic blast beats, a basic double bass pattern and all that kind of a jazz, I'm just going to get in here and program a quick little metal drum beat just to show an example of some of these techniques. Alrighty, so just threw together this quick little string of random little beats. I didn't use all the examples that we did, but I just kind of focused on checking the velocity, making sure that all of them are at the right spot, making sure that I'm paying attention to the stickings of right hand versus left hand, also tuning the drums, doing all that kind of a thing. And we get some that sounds a little bit like this. So just a quick little extra that I threw in at the end of the hip hop video, I think I'll throw it in here as well, is that if you're really just trying to get these to sound fat and punchy, a quick way to do that is to throw a little bit of compression on it. Now, a really great compressor for drums is this Native Instruments Supercharger. Again, it is free. That is free with an FR to the double E. You can go ahead and pick this up on the Native Instruments website, and it is a phenomenal compressor that I use quite often. Now, it has this little input trim where it'll show us if our drums are a little bit too loud. Let's go ahead and check it out. So yeah, we're just aiming to get that right there in that green. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn this punch and the dirt on. That should give us a little bit more punch, and then the dirt is gonna punch, and then the dirt is going to give us a little bit more of like a high end. So check this out. Now our channel's clipping a little bit. It is a little bit loud, but as you could hear, that made quite a bit of a difference. Now I'm going to turn this output down a little bit. We're going to turn this compressor up and see if we can't dial it in a little. Boom. Sounding like some fat metal drums to me. Anyway, there's nothing too crazy to them. I think that the trick really here is the software. That's going to be the biggest thing, making sure that you have a decent software, a little bit of drum knowledge. Understanding that, hey, typically snares on 2, 4, or 3 for halftime. Also just knowing that 16th notes, 16th note triplets, 32nd notes, knowing your rhythm scales. Now, if you don't fully understand all music theory, I have a link down in the description of basically every video I post. I encourage you to go give it 30 minutes or an hour of your day, pick up a couple tips, tricks. It'll only make your drum programming and your music writing significantly quicker. Hey guys, TJ here. Thank you so much for tuning into this tutorial. I hope that it helped you out. I hope you found something useful. And I also hope that maybe you had a good time while you were at it. If you want more of these tutorials, you want to hear more of the music that I'm making, please, please, please be sure to subscribe to this channel. Helps me out a ton. Help me help you, so to say. I'm also looking for requests. If there's any tips, tricks, anything like that that you want to see, please drop a comment, send me a message, do that sort of a thing. Now, if you want to stay in touch with what I am doing on a daily, head over to my Instagram. You can find me under TJ Site, and I post just about everything there, man. I mean, music, what I'm doing with this channel, what I'm doing with my video game Twitch channel, what I'm doing with Evasite stuff, which, speaking of Evasite stuff, that is my solo hip-hop project. If you want to hear some of that music, what I'm doing with that sort of thing, you can find all that music on this channel as well. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this helped you out, and until next time.